Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Climate Action Live. I'm your host, Axel Segerbrecht, and joining me tonight are Jill Perkins, aka Jamja Jill, and Sarah from Kitchen Tidbits to talk about the slow food movement. Jill is a regular co-host on my show, and I love that she brings interesting guests and topics to the table. But before we dive into the subject and introduce our guest, let me say that I'm enjoying doing this with you very much, and realise to do right by you, I need more time, which is why I'm producing this show monthly now, instead of the previous weekly schedule. More about what's coming up at the end of the show. So, let's dive straight in. Jill, can you start us off by explaining what slow food is?
Absolutely. So the slow food movement came about as a reaction to the opposite, the fast food movement. And obviously things like what you think about when you think about fast food, you think about McDonald's and Burger King. And I mean, to be fair, in recent years, they have started thinking about things like their packaging, but still, in terms of where they source their food and stuff like that, there's still a lot of a long way to go. The slow food movement tries to do the opposite. It tries to focus on growing locally, buying seasonably, trying to, wherever you can, buy stuff outside of packaging from farm shops, everything like that. But as with, everything eco, it's a case of us all doing our small bits where we can, and finding that balance between busy lives and budgets and everything like that. It's kind of unideal, I still think, but I think that kind of gives you a top level summary of what
it does give us a very nice introduction. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Shall we introduce our guest?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's see if I can do this right. Hello. Hello, Sarah.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. Can I start by asking, what is it that Kitchen Tidbit does?
Yeah, so I'm a family mealtimes mentor, and I work with people transform their mealtimes from stressful to stress-free. So I specialize in working with parents on the practical aspects of family mealtimes, supporting parents of fussy eaters to help their children develop a love of food. But I also look at where we can save time and energy in the kitchen, teaching key skills around meal planning and, importantly for you guys, reducing food waste. So how can you make best use of your time, your energy, and your ingredients in the kitchen?
Fantastic. Thank you for that introduction. I have a real problem with food waste, I have to say, because I grew up with a mother, not blaming my mum, by the way, she's a wonderful lady. Mum, if you're watching this, love you. She grew up at a time after the war, 1945, when they had literally nothing. There wasn't any shops to go to. All of the stuff we now know is I'm just going to pop down to the shops and buy something. None of that worked. So I grew up in a household where nothing was thrown away. And you would open the fridge door and you would be greeted by something that is formed its own government. So I have a really horrible connection to food, because instead of going down the road that she took by just scraping some stuff off and eating it, or maybe leaving it on the windowsill until it grows into yogurt or something else. Instead of doing that, I am the opposite. I'm like, oh, this is 2 days before the best before date, I better throw it out.
Axel, no.
Oh no. I feel so guilty, and I my friends who are much better with food, I include you in that, Jill, they're horrified, and rightly so. I shouldn't. So what can I do, Sarah and Jill, what can I do to combat the insane amount of food I waste in my home?
I think it starts with thinking about what it is you're buying and whether you need to buy it. So, reduce the waste by only having in the house what you need. That goes hand in hand with doing some planning, hopefully. And, you don't have to stick to a rigid plan. You can work more flexibly and do some planning and making sure that you're only buying what you need. I think the next step then is looking at how you're storing that food, so that you're giving it as long a lease of life as possible, and making friends with your freezer. So anything that you can't use, getting it in the freezer. Any leftovers that you're not going to be able to eat, making sure that's going in the freezer. Yeah, they would be my 3 go-to to drastically reduce what's going in the food waste bin.
I think it's also about when you say use by and sell by dates, those are 2 different things, and it's important to know like the difference. And one is very much about marketing, and one is about.
Tell me more, Jill. I'm a sucker for labels, so maybe I got it totally wrong.
So sell by is just when it stops looking pretty on the shelf, really, and whereas use by actually has some sort of, scientific evidence it probably doesn't taste nice, or if you leave it too long after that, it could make you sick. But to be honest, I'm very much, even though I wasn't brought up in the home economics generation, I kind of was, in the sense I was taught those things at home. So, I mean, to me, my husband Adam, he always laughs, and our catchphrase at home is, Jill goes, "Oh no, it's fine. That's fine. Don't worry about that. That's fine."
Was that the initial reaction after you sampled it?
There is an element to that, though, isn't there, about using your senses? There is. Some foods do have a best before date, and that is a safety precaution. I'm quite heartened that the Co-op, for example, are going to ditch the best before dates on their yogurt.
Good point, yeah.
Because there is an element of just use your senses. Does it look safe to eat? Does it smell safe to eat? Therefore, some foods are going to.
To be honest, the only thing that I'm super cautious with is meat. Anything which is meat, I will go pretty much to the letter by the best before. But in terms of like pretty much anything else, I don't. In terms of eggs, I know plenty of people who have hens, and I tend to go with the home economics route, because eggs generally have a best before about a month on average before they need to. And so I tend to put it in a glass of water, which is an old home economics trick.
I learned that one too recently. That's a great tip.
And it makes a lot of sense, because literally the shell starts letting in air over time, and so it will float if it's off. That's it.
Very
equally so with something like eggs or meat, in fact. Absolutely what Sarah was saying about using your senses, it's so darn obvious when an egg is off. We all learned what that horrible smell is, probably from little boys' bottoms at school. But that is, that is very obvious. If you crack an egg and it's off, you will smell it.
Even I can smell it. And I have to say, I'm, in defense of sensory deprived people, I'm not sure whether that's the right word, but I've got chronic sinusitis, so my sense of smell is terrible. Unless it's really extreme smell, I can't really, I don't really notice. But something like an egg that's gone off, I definitely can smell. I think it's the bit in between there I'm always worried about, and because I'm vegetarian and as much vegan as I can, so I eat very little dairy. In fact, I very rarely eat dairy, but I do like my cheese, so that's about the only dairy I eat. But I'll buy something that's a ready meal, although that's you see, I think all of these problems can go away if we are more vegan, or vegetarian at least, and eat less animal products, and we eat it more consciously, like you said. Make a meal plan, or just know what you're eating. And I'm interested in your experiences eating fresh fruit and veg. I think it's very easy to see when a vegetable is overly ripe, it goes off. It's just disgusting. You can't really eat it anymore. But with a piece of meat, or stuff like milk, or other dairy-like products, it's hard to tell unless they're really off. So what's your experience buying fresh produce? Jill mentioned you've got friends with hens. So how do you know? You just do the glass of water test with the eggs, I guess. But
I mean, to be honest, if on the occasions when friends very kindly donate me some eggs, or I buy half a dozen eggs off a friend, then I generally I wouldn't buy them off probably anyone, but it's people I know who have farms or whatever. So I kind of trust that they're today's eggs. They usually are, or within like 1 or 2 days, and they taste delicious. And I mean, I just try and support local on that regard if I can, because that's quite an easy one. You quite often see, local farms will have a signpost outside their front door saying fresh eggs. Of course, though, at the moment, there's the issue with the bird flu and the fact that all the hens are having to be kept inside and everything like that. So I'd probably be a bit more cautious of it at the moment. But I think with fruit and veg as well, there's a lot to be said, and I think Sarah will agree with me. But the small amount which I've talked to Sarah, just want to put this in, that Sarah and I met through a wonderful, wonderful networking evening called Mummy's Gin Fund.
excellent.
Which we absolutely love. She runs a free, I just want to throw this in here because she's wonderful. If any other mummies in business out there, she does a free networking thing once a month, a Zoom room roulette. That's a mouthful. Wow. Where you just meet wonderful people, and that's how I met Sarah. But I was going to say on the sort of vegetable front, I have say if I have a carrot, or there's all sorts of things which maybe past its best to eat raw, but I'd still use it cooked. If it's looking a little bit wilted or whatever, it can still easily go in a casserole, as long as it hasn't got any mold on it or anything like that, so I just want to make that point as well. It's I think I just forever say, and I always stand on my soapbox about this one, but it just drives me absolutely nutty that they scrapped home economics from the curriculum because it was sexist. Well, surely if it's sexist, teach it to both frigging
exactly. Don't just cancel it. Absolutely agree.
Yeah. So and then it won't be sexist anymore, will it? Instead, do you know what? Let's scrap it entirely for the curriculum. And so no one has any of that knowledge anymore unless they're taught by their parents. And so, so much of the population struggles with being able to cook a basic meal, to have a basic understanding of household finances. There was such an opportunity there to expand the subject into, hey, teach them about credit, teach them about APR, teach them about, all these
teach them about climate change. A lot of these things
they're all interlinked, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like, to me, like home economics is about a sustainable lifestyle, just in general. And if I think back to not just my mum who grew up after the war, but it just makes sense to fix stuff and to buy stuff that lasts, or to not just throw stuff away just because something new's come along. And I think it's the culture we've grown up in. It's so influenced by this consumer culture. So I wanted to ask you this, Sarah. Maybe you can help. I saw some stuff on social media with tips on how to keep food fresher for longer. Like there was one thing. See what you make of this. There was one thing about peeling carrots and putting them in a jar of cold water and putting that in the fridge, and that apparently doubles or triples their lifetime.
That's how I store my carrots, though I don't peel them first, because who needs to peel them? Scrub them. That's a bit of waste that you're saving. And there's loads of nutrition and goodness in the skin, so why peel them? But yeah, absolutely. I store my carrots in a Tupperware box of cold water, and it keeps them nice and bright and orange. It keeps them crunchy rather than going black and floppy in the veg drawer. So yes, that one does work.
How much, sorry to be specific, but how much water? Because, I wonder about this as well, because like with fresh herbs, for example, I had some fresh coriander, which I bought because I couldn't get a coriander plant this time. I got like the cut coriander, and if I put it in a jar of water in the fridge, it wilted because it was too cold. So it's better to. So then, and then you get into the whole thing of really should you be storing vegetables in the fridge versus not storing them in a vegetable box or whatever. And like I know my mother-in-law, for example, she wants to crucify me for storing my potatoes in the fridge, but
potatoes shouldn't be in the fridge. That's a
thing.
That sets off chemicals, which once they're cooked, they can go in the fridge, but not when they're raw. But there's a good point actually. But there's that balance between ensuring that your fruit and veg stays fresh enough to get you from one shop to another, and still be appealing. With the carrots, it's in a Tupperware box, so the carrots are just covered in water. So
cold water, just in
and it lid on and in the fridge. With it's much better to wrap cut herbs in kitchen towel or a tea towel, which has then been dampened, and either in a box or in a bag in the fridge. So it's just damp. And that keeps them fresher rather than putting them in a glass of water or something like that. Beans you can store in the same way, wrapped in a damp tea towel to help them. Parsnips, store them in the same way as water, but absolutely potatoes need to be stored outside of the fridge, as do onions and garlic. They need to be in cool, dry, dark places with room to breathe, and potatoes and onions kept separately. I know a lot of us store them together, but actually that's just the onions are gonna make the potatoes sprout and go bad really quickly.
Amazing. That I learned another thing that I will change. I will change the error off my ways. I'll report back. So how do you stop potatoes from sprouting? Was there something like an apple then that you can put in there? Or read something, I can't really remember what it was. What do you do to stop them sprout?
I keep mine either in a cotton bag, so one of those tote bags works really well, or I generally have mine in a cardboard box. So there's plenty of room to breathe, an old delivery box. It's dark, it's cool, and it's perfect. You can't stop them sprouting, but it does delay it.
I guess the problem is, again, with all these things is even like I have a pantry, but it's a pantry come cleaning cupboard, come
storage,
like storage, everything. So even with the pantry, I don't really have a dedicated place to store stuff, and like my house is quite limited in storage. So that's another reason why I use my fruit and vegetable drawer and stuff it full, really. But I have been trying to take stuff out of the plastic wrappers when I have to buy them in plastic. Well, I have to, when that is how they come from the supermarket, and putting them in brown paper bags. And I do think that does make it last a bit longer. And another switch which we've made in the last year is we generally use romaine lettuce, is that what it's called, rather than like leaves, because you can just peel off the ones which you want to use, and that seems to last a lot longer and leave you at the end of the week with quite fresh leaves still, rather than that.
It's far more economic to buy a head of lettuce than it is to buy those bagged salad leaves, and 40% of those bagged salad leaves goes to waste. A massive amount of waste from those, because once they're open, that's it. But again, with those, if you are buying them, wrap them up in the same way that you would do the fresh cut herbs, and it does give them an extra couple of days rather than festering in the plastic bag.
One tip I want to contribute is it's not like I'm completely horrible with food. I love my hydroponics, and I grow mostly herbs and lettuce. See whether you have experience regrowing food scraps. So I've made a test after seeing this again on the social media a while ago, where I took I think it was romaine lettuce as well, and put it in a shallow glass of water, and it regrew.
Yeah, spring onions is the other one. My kids love watching the spring onions regrow.
Spring onions, you can do that as well.
Cool. Yeah, I've seen that, but it kind of came out watery, so I don't know. At what point do you need to put something in earth rather than just in a jar of water?
That's an interesting question, because with my hydroponics, yes, there are certain things like root vegetables that, carrots, for example. I don't think you can grow hydroponically, or potatoes for that matter, but pretty much everything that grows above ground, you can put into a water type solution, and it doesn't have to be water. You've got different types of hydroponic type system. In fact, the coolest one I've seen sprays a mist of nutritious water vapor onto the roots, which they really love. And another one that was really awesome, if you like fish, is aquaponics, where you can put your vegetables in the aquarium effectively, and the fish are fertilizing your veggies, which is amazing. So the next thing I'm going to try and do is a grey water harvesting system, which I'm in a miniature format. I'm building for my farm that I'm trying to build or get off the ground this year. So one of the things I'm testing for that is how does grey water work, and you can use certain very much water loving plants to kind of clean the water. So I was thinking, if you can do that with plants in general, could you do it with something that you eat? Because ultimately, once it's gone through the process, it goes into probably the garden to water the plants anyway. So can I ask one other question, just to kind of drive it back towards the kind of key of this kind of show, which is all about how does any of this really affect climate change? What effect does sorry, let me turn off some caption. I only have one hand to do this. Sorry. How does this whole thing, saving food scraps, regrowing food scraps, eating better in, the vegan food and the vegetarian food, I kind of understand how that impacts on climate change, because obviously they just had, funny anecdote, sorry, they just saw the cows burping and farting from space. I can see how eating less meat and reducing the amount of wonderful rainforest that we're losing to Burger King, makes sense. But how in general does slow food and stopping waste help fight climate change?
Well, it's just it's fundamentally just producing less waste and only using what you need, and not throwing things away. And the other point, which we haven't kind of touched on yet, but I think it's really important, is once you get to that point where it really does need chucking and there is no other option, what are you doing with it at that point? And how important it is for people to really embrace that vast majority of councils now do food waste bins, and we should be using that service. And like, I sort of started doing it after the boys were born, and honestly quite shocked by how much it's reduced my black wheelie bin waste. Like, literally my black wheelie bin now only has sanitary waste. That's basically all that's in there, and tissues.
Not even packaging.
Well, yeah, plastic, bloody plastic. But but to be honest, a lot of, I try and consciously buy wherever I can. So yeah, crisp packets are one of the worst things. But I do try and look for packaging which is a bit greener where I can. So,
have you found any crisps?
There is one brand which I found which does compostable packaging, but at the moment they're very small. They're called Two Farmers.
Two Farmers. Is it literally two farmers?
Maybe, yeah. But they're doing, because they're a small startup, they're doing subscription based, and they charge 25 quid for 25 packets at the moment, which is obviously kind of like individual corner shop prices, isn't it? It's not sustainable in terms of a family budget, especially in the times we're living in currently. So
What can we do to reduce that? I mean, I would love to go up to Walker's Crisps and say, "Oi, you know, just putting your plastic wraps
yeah,
in a cardboard box," which I've started doing, doesn't strike me as the best thing. Have you ever tried doing, Sarah? Maybe you can tell us. Have you tried making crisps yourself?
Yeah,
And any
and
tips?
they're disappointing.
Mhm.
So disappointing. We don't eat a lot of crust in our house, so you know, when we're going to, we buy a packet of crisps, and you know, I do try and collect that plastic packaging. There are quite a lot of places, but again, it's effort, isn't it? You have to travel miles to find a place where you can find one of those bins and just deposit your plastic packaging.
I'm doubtful that it will actually get recycled. I don't believe
Yeah.
any of these Tetracycle schemes.
No,
It's
I
just
think crisp packets are used to make homeless blankets. So if you could get on board with one of those schemes,
how, where, more.
there's several. Like if you Google it, I
Yeah.
want to say there's one in Luton, but
Mm.
again, the problem is, having to get it to them. But there's quite a few people who collect. I don't know if the Samaritans do. I think maybe Bernardo's as well. But it's a specific type of crisp packet as well. It has to be foil on one side and plastic on the outside, those ones.
Holy
And
moly.
then they can iron them together and they turn them into, the blankets which runners use or they use for homeless.
Ah, those blankets. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it
Sorry.
can be used for that. But I mean, for example, in our village, there was a lady collecting and I sort of turned up at her door with 2 big carrier bags, and her husband just glared at me. And I was just like, yeah, I might not do this again. He was like, bloody. And I was just like, okay, yeah. See, but yeah, I mean, it's just.
That's crazy.
It's,
Crazy. I mean, that's crazy in a good way. Sorry, I don't mean to diss it. I just
no. But again, it's having to sort of find the right ones which have and stuff. But I mean, it is a thing. But this
that's
is the kind
fantastic.
of thing which, once again, wouldn't it be wonderful if Walker's Crisps actually took some responsibility and started, working directly with these charities, providing free postage back to them of so these things could be used, because surely they could be not only used for the homeless, they could be used for all the marathons which go on around the country, or for
first aid kits and
first aid
all
kits
sorts
and
of
everything
things.
like that. So,
That's fantastic PR in there for them as well. So surely it's worth their effort, isn't it?
come on, Walkers!
Yeah, come on, Walkers.
So far we can go as individuals, isn't there? Before
This kind of leads me on to the last question I had, but we're only halfway through the show, so I'm gonna. It is kind of a general thing, and we talked about this a lot, about what can I do to make a difference. I'm just one person. I hear a lot. It's like it doesn't make a bit of a difference, and I think I go back to an old phrase that I'll wheel out in these cases, which is convenience is a planet killer. And changing or giving up your convenience, or giving up a little bit of convenience, goes a long way. Like, recycle. It does. Yes, it might end up in a landfill. It might get burned. It might actually become, clothes for the next generation, or it might become a blanket or whatever. So, I think I'm an optimist in this. So, I'm not perfect either. I see myself run into a shop, go like, sod it, I need something. I don't have time. And I look at the aisles in Tesco the other day, and I didn't really like to shop at the big shops that much. But I went in there and I was looking at the vegetables, and I was looking for a head of broccoli. I couldn't find one without spending, and asking somebody and spending time. That wasn't wrapped in plastic. And I'm sure there was one. It's just out of this massive shelf they have with like I mean, how many different types of broccoli do we need? Do you want one? Do you want two? Do you want them in plastic? Do you want them in double plastic? Do you want them chucked in, cut into little pieces? It's a bit silly. So one thing I wanted to ask, and again, I hope this doesn't come across in any way in a sexist way. What can you do as a parent, especially, and do better to prepare meals for your children, and especially with lunch boxes hopefully becoming a thing again? What can we do as parents to prepare meals? And I know it very often falls on women, and I think that's absolutely wrong. I'm a effectively an only parent, at least for half the time, and I'm really struggling. So I'm only cooking the same thing, and I've gotten to the level where I actually buy frozen vegetables, to my shame, because it is just,
But
again, I guess more
I
convenient.
actually don't think it's necessarily shameful to buy frozen. And just on the broccoli point, I have a real gripe with Tesco's this week, or these last 2 weeks. They've stopped selling frozen broccoli florets. And I'm just,
Again,
I don't know why they've done this.
bias.
Because actually, the whole reason I that is my go-to for my kids, and we absolutely love broccoli, and that is something which is so great because you can just grab it, and you can grab a couple of florets, put it in the microwave with a bit of butter, and you're done. Whereas having a whole head of broccoli, it doesn't necessarily last the whole week. So they're actually adding to the food waste problem. So I just wanted to point out that one little point. But it's sometimes frozen is what Sarah said in the beginning. Make friends with your freezer is a big part of food preservation.
Should I be?
Some
Sorry, go on.
frozen vegetables are so much more nutritious than anything that you would buy on the supermarket shelf anyway. How long has that taken to get to the shelf? How long has it been sitting on the shelf? Then how long is it sitting in your fridge before you eat it? Whereas the frozen stuff, it's frozen mostly at source. And hail the pea, the king of frozen vegetable.
Should we be
No
buying
preservatives, no. Yeah.
Should we be buying fresh fruit and veg, and then, you can put fruit in the freezer too. I've got some fruit in the freezer. Why would I think otherwise? Should we be buying fresh fruit and veg and then preparing it ourselves and putting it in the freezer, or is it okay just to buy what I usually buy is broccoli, florets, and peas, of course, as well as carrots?
Bit of both. Why not? There's nothing wrong with frozen veg, and there's nothing wrong with freezing any fresh veg and fruit that you've got that you're not going to be able to eat. Or, and if you are growing some at home, you've got an allotment, and you've got a glut that you're not going to get through, then absolutely prepare it and get it in the freezer. And buying frozen berries, for example, is brilliant. You can be buying there's frozen in season rather than buying out of season berries in plastic packaging. There's so many benefits to frozen stuff, and absolutely make friends with your freezer.
I need a bigger
And
freezer.
I think it's about having like a bit of everything in as well, because there's certain tinned fruit which I will have in, which does taste really good. Like pineapple is like an absolute go-to. I've actually got some mango to try. I haven't tried it yet, but go give that a go as well. But it's a case of, again, having some tinned stuff in. And that's kind of like what I go to at the end of the week when we run out of the fresh stuff, and that's okay. And it's fruit in water. I don't get in syrup, so.
And better to have frozen and tinned than not at all, isn't it?
Exactly, because you're still getting your vegetables and you're still getting your nutrition in there. So.
Is the tinned stuff and the frozen stuff as nutritiously valuable as the fresh stuff?
There's a very marginal difference between them, but then that's comparing it to completely fresh produce, and especially if we're buying it from the supermarkets, it isn't completely fresh, unless we're going straight to the farm to get it.
What do you think of these farmer boxes then, the Riverdales of this world?
They're good, but they're definitely premium.
Yeah.
And even I tried Oddbox most recently, which it markets itself as being the glut stuff, the stuff which would otherwise rot and waste and whatever, but it was priced more expensive or as expensive as Aber and Cole organic. So, and it wasn't organic. So unfortunately, I end up cancelling it because I was like, well, it's not even like that nice a produce. Again, you know, I got all excited when I was in Ampthill the other week and came across a fresh fruit and veg market, and I was like, oh, look at all this, so lovely. Oh, look, there's like different coloured beetroots and different coloured carrots, and when all they like gathered, just I wasn't even looking at the prices. I was like, oh, it's great. Oh, this lovely, all freshly grown locally. Got to like the checkout, and he was like, £35, please. And I was like, pardon?
Yeah.
Wait, what? How did that happen? I thought you were a market. Oh no, you're in Ampthill. Right, good.
It's a premium market.
And suddenly you realise, like, that's the thing. It's so difficult. It's so difficult to actually get any of these things and still be on a budget. You know, you really have to. One thing which I really wish was more of a thing in the UK, but legislation prevents it, is people sharing allotment stock.
What?
Because
What?
people aren't
That's illegal.
officially, no, to my understanding anyway, they're not allowed to sell it. They're not allowed because it's not
To sell it.
monitored.
Okay.
Whereas actually, ironically, in America, to my understanding, they're a lot more ahead of the game with this stuff. And you have, to me, like in the village I'm in, which is a small village, you've got a local village shop and stuff. Wouldn't it be wonderful if they allowed to have one shelf, which was, I mean, we've got a massive allotment down the end of the village, and you see stuff literally ending up rotting in the soil because people inevitably grow more than they need. And this is, again, part of the whole thing. But wouldn't it be great if there was a cooperative thing where everyone donated, or even if there was some sort of cooperative scheme around the village of people who are, you know, oh, I have too many onions, so I'll do this or whatever. I mean, when the boys were little, I did sort of do a shout out and say, oh, has anyone got a glut of like soft fruit? And there was this lovely lady, and she does usually still contact me actually, because I always would puree the boys' fruit for them, and she would literally give me like 3 carrier bags full of apples, and I'd be like, awesome, and just, you know, make it into chutney, make it into baby puree, make it into, you know, stewed apple to go in the freezer.
This is, you just jogged my memory there, Jill. There is something I came across through the wonderful people at Geek Night in Milton Keynes. We had somebody, I think this was during COVID, on who created an app to combat food waste effectively. That kind of does exactly what you just described, where you can, I guess, take a photo. And I don't have the app anymore because I tried it and I don't think there was anybody in my area. So
is it too good to go?
Pardon?
Is it too good to go?
I don't know. You see,
Well,
I'm
Olio is
horrible
another
with
one.
names.
Olio is another one. Yeah.
What's that name?
Olio.
Olio. That might have been it. I do apologize. I can't remember names or numbers. I'm good with shapes and visual stuff.
Olio.
You have to draw it out for me. No, I'll put it in. I'll put it in the show notes on the blog post. So do come back and have a look. Also like and subscribe and comment. But yeah, comment. Let us know if you're using one of those services, because I think I might need to go back, because it is a great idea, and I think it really does help when you do this. And one thing I wanted to ask on the back of that is, I'm looking to start my own carbon farm, and part of the things that we're doing will be growing vegetables and stuff like that. And the idea is that we will sell this to people, obviously. So, you know, I was looking at the feasibility of having kind of environmentally friendly way to deliver farm produce to people. I mean, have you used a farmer's market or an actual kind of farmer delivery service, unlike the Able and Co and Oddbox and such? Have you actually had any experience buying from a farm?
There was one which was based out of Wolverton, actually, which I think they eventually folded, but they literally were a farm and they delivered you a fresh veg box for sort of 20 quid. There's also, my mum swears by one in Newport Pagnell, which is the greengrocers, and you can, like, she literally old school style calls them up on the landline.
Nice.
Says, I want this, and this, and puts in a box for her and delivered it. And that's what she used over lockdown. I think, you know, supermarkets obviously have a hell of a lot to answer for. If you go back to like my grandma's generation, that's what they would have done, is they would have gone to the butchers, the bakers and everything like that. But unfortunately, you know, people don't have time and they don't.
So it's convenience again.
These things, you know, it's so difficult because you want to be able to do these things. I generally will opt for the package free option when I'm ordering from Tesco's now. But then inevitably, you know, I order, if you order 5 loose apples, then it comes in a paper bag. But if you order 10, which is generally what we get through in a week, then it comes in a flipping plastic bag rather than 2 paper bags. And I'm just like, would you please just...
How often do you buy, Sarah and Jill? How often do you do your shop?
I do fortnightly.
So do you?
Yeah.
How do you make things last?
By storing it properly. And you can store freezer and tin produce and pulses. But yeah, I have a beef with Asda at the moment because their online shop, you can't buy any loose produce. It's all multiples in plastic packaging.
Wow.
So you go to Asda and in their fresh fruit and veg aisles, you can buy loose. And actually, they've done a great job there. More and more of it is loose, and they've balanced out the price a lot more. Whereas previously, if you bought individual, the price was hiked up so that, you know, it was much cheaper to buy in packaging. But on ordering online, you cannot buy individual loose items. And it's infuriating.
It is infuriating because actually this is the thing as well. Another part of the slow food movement is actually I'm a huge advocate for home delivery. And actually, this is another climate related thing. It's the case that one van delivering to multiple households is far more environmentally friendly than 10 cars on the road, all driving their individual route to that supermarket. So, you know, at what point are we going to make all those vans electrical? At what point are we going to like start giving people a better option? I mean, I used to like the Morrisons. I actually switched away from Morrisons to Tesco's because the monthly delivery cost was better with Tesco's, because it's always a balancing act. You're always juggling. But there was things which I really liked about Morrisons. Morrisons had the because they used to be under the same umbrella as Ocado. So they had this system of color coding your bags. So you had, you know, store, cupboard, freezer, fridge. But then the point was you'd get them all in from the door in your bags, but then you'd give them back every week. So if you were on a weekly rotation with them, they were reusing these same carrier bags over and over. Then it's not a problem because you'd always get your 5p back. They'd refund you for the bags you gave back each week. And it was far more logical. Whereas your likes of Asda and Tesco's goes, right, we're being environmentally friendly. No more bags at all. So here's all your cans of beans in a big box, which we're not going to bring in for you because COVID. So yeah, go ahead and individually take your can and walk it to your kitchen and then go back and get your other, you know, it's just, I don't want to swear, but there is no logic and reason to that system. You know, equally so, there's things, what drives me potty about so many environmental things, and you touched on this, Axel, is that things in your upbringing which you just saw as, you know, that's just what we do, that's how things happen, blah blah blah, and then you're just like, why doesn't that happen anymore? I remember going to the supermarket with my mum and there being a huge, like, want of a better word, secondhand cardboard box store, you know, and so you could get the packaging, which it came into the supermarket in boxes. You could go and grab that from a big storage area, and you could pack all your food
What
shopping
happened to
in
that?
cardboard. It was shelf space, wasn't it? So
Because in Germany, if I remember, and I haven't lived in Germany for donkey's years, but when I was in Germany, especially going to Lidl and Aldi, there was always, you know, it's normal. It's just there. It's under the shelf area, and I think maybe a Lidl and Aldi have, you know, the advantage here because they're designed their stores to be, you just throw it in into your basket. You rush to this big kind of shelf, and there's loads of kind of places to
boxes
pick that up.
underneath. See, that's logical because that's the perfect place to store it, because it's after you've passed the checkout.
Yeah.
And whilst it kind of messes with British people's heads because they're just like, what do you mean? I had to shove it all in and I don't know what I'm doing. And Lidl and Aldi stress me out. Blah, blah. Once you actually get your head around what you're doing and the fact that there is an area where you can calmly repack everything.
And recycle the packaging. And this is what I found interesting. I'm not sure whether this ever was a thing, or I think it should be a thing. In Germany, you can maybe I just did it and I didn't know, but there were recycling bins, so I just took the liberty of unpacking my stuff that came in packaging and put it into the recycling, and then I put it into one of the big boxes or my own bags, and then I put it in the car. So it made a lot of sense. But I'm with you on this, Jill, when it comes to home delivery, and I think if we can get to doing it at least carbon neutrally, and ideally not hand picked by people who share the same, you know, space as normal shoppers. You know, they're big distribution centers, so maybe it needs to move to a slightly different model. But then again, you know, Aldi especially and Co, they use their shelf space as a warehouse, just a local one. So, you know, I think we need more home delivery, and I think it needs to be more carbon neutral. And this is what annoys me about, you know, we'll talk about what grinds my gears. What grinds my gears are home delivery services that are not doing it in a carbon neutral way. And I tried the Riverford boxes, and great stuff. But again, like you said, Jill, it's a premium. And also, I quizzed the guy that I met at the vegan market in Bletchley. Shameful plug. There's one in June. Check it out. Link is below. He admitted, and he was very open about it. He said, we don't have, you know, non-diesel vehicles. We only have diesel vehicles. And this isn't coming from a local farm. This is coming from a regional farm. Although some of the places, it stretches the definition of what's in a region. But it's, you know, I talked to him, and I should have done a proper interview maybe, but or at least written it up. There is nothing to help these guys grow their business in a carbon neutral way, which is really annoying and frustrating, because I think what they're doing is good. I think we need more of this. We need more choice. We need more competition, which then sadly we live in a capitalistic society. But you know, it would drive down the prices. And I've switched, just to end on this little tangent, I've switched to Ocado, and it sounds very middle class of me, especially during a crisis where food prices and everything is through the roof. But actually, I found them more economical than Tesco's and Asda, because I buy a lot of vegan stuff, and while Tesco and Asda and you know, the big supermarkets have a little bit of choice, it's not. I usually have to buy from specialist vegan websites and suppliers who then have to ship it to me. So I not only pay £8 or something crazy for shipping, I also don't want to buy perishable goods or frozen goods from them, because that's that's even more energy intensive for them to ship on a tiny scale. So I said, sorry, small independent vegan shops are going to go to Ocado because they stock those items that I want, and it's much more efficient and hopefully, more carbon neutral overall to get it from one place once every other week. And I think I should go and do what you're doing, Sarah. So I'm going to try that out as well. I'm going to switch to a fortnightly shop because I think the concept of a weekly shop is again probably a marketing thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I bet you a vegan sandwich that somebody in a marketing department for one of the retailers came up with this idea of let's do the weekly shop because that way we get people to buy more stuff. And I think back in the days, my mum certainly didn't do a weekly shop. I think we went shopping
Incredibly
every other week.
stressful, every week having to try and think up 7 meals, and I always leave it to the 11th hour, and then I'm like, I don't know what I want to eat.
Do you do meal plans?
I try. I need help from Sarah's wisdom.
Sarah, what can you recommend meal plan wise? Is there a trick? How do you do it?
Schedule it in, so make it a priority. Put it in your calendar so that your memory is jogged to do it. Choose a time to do it where it makes sense for you. So there's no point in trying to do your meal planning on a Sunday evening, for example, if that's when you just need to kick back and relax and get set up for the week ahead. So when is it going to work best for you? When are you going to be in that work frame of mind so that, you don't have to switch from relaxing to doing something? Just make a start. The thought of it is really worse than actually doing it. And
the thought of wondering whether the kids will eat what I concoct, I think is worse for me. But your mileage might
involved, and that's another way thing. It's not always just your responsibility. Get the family involved in whatever you're doing. Each person can choose something in turns, and if children are involved in that decision making process, they know which meals are going to be challenging for them that can come up. Actually, they can deal with it a lot better if they know that in advance. One thing that a lot of the families that I work with like to do is to have sticks with names of meals on them in a jar, and you pick out 7 meals from the jar.
I love that.
That's a great idea.
I love that.
Absolutely no effort required.
Lollipop sticks as well.
Yeah.
I think it's on par with jam jars in our house. So
those sticks will go in a jam jar.
Excellent. One second, folks. I'm going to see if I can do this right. I want to do. People should be doing or could be doing to combat food waste and generally just live a more sustainable kind of food life. Sorry, this is my mind. I was like pressing buttons, trying to remember which order to press them in, and then make sense what I'm talking. Sarah, come on. What are your top 3 tips? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot there.
I missed the beginning of the question. You took me out of the show.
Yeah, me too.
Oh my God! Did it actually? I thought I just took out the. It's not OBS. I'm sorry. This is just Restream. Sorry, I didn't realize it was actually kicking you out there. I just thought I hid you. Let me recap then. Sorry, Sarah. I'll promise I'll do better, and maybe I can switch back to OBS and I have got a bit more fine-grained control over my sources here. The question was, what can I do? What are your top 3 tips about what people can do? And I realized we have talked about quite a few of them, but how would you sum it up if I said, what are your top 3 tips?
I think first thing to do is to start small. You don't have to do it all at once. It's about taking small steps and building on them. So thinking about what's your motivation? Why are you doing it? And always having that in the back of your mind as well, so that when times get hard, you can't face doing that meal planning. You're on the brink of throwing something in the food waste bin, you can go back and think, what is my why? And that keeps you going. Just identify 1 or 2 things that you can get started with, make them habitual, and then pick another couple and just go from there, build on it. So 2 tips really, but yeah, absolutely, meal planning is the answer to so many of the problems with food waste, with saving money, with saving time, feeling in control, ensuring your kids are eating well, ensuring you're getting a variety of foods into everybody. So meal plan, start small, and really get in tune with your reason why.
Little and often, just like my mum taught me how to eat. Fantastic, Sarah. No, that's great. That makes a lot of sense. Certainly sage advice. Jill, what are your 3?
I think one which I haven't actually mentioned yet, but I would recommend to anyone is to, if you are a meat eater, to do Meatless Monday, or do 1 meat-free day a week, because again, that's part of my whole ethos of actually, if you do one thing like that, 1 day's worth, even if that's spread out, it doesn't have to be a Monday. Monday is a convenient marketing thing, and it was set up as such. That's what Meatless Monday is. But actually, if you watch the TED Talk on Meatless Monday, you will be shocked how much carbon that takes out of the atmosphere, off the roads, etc., etc. You don't have to be extreme one way or another. It's all about us all doing our little bit and doing a little bit less meat eating. And I know I need to do more meal planning, and I feel like I need to have a one-to-one with Sarah, just to get her wisdom on everything in life. Around how the hell I do like fortnightly, or I don't know. I mean, it just seems all impossible to me at the moment, but
You can do it. Like Sarah said, small and often, and putting stuff in the calendar is exactly how I rock. If
I
it's
am
not in my calendar, it
trying to
doesn't
get
work.
inspiration off trying to look at the very, very many cookbooks which I own. Again, it's that whole thing. I can't remember if it was Sarah who said this to me, or whether it was my friend Tuli, of trying to aim at least for 1 new recipe a month. Just aim for that. or one recipe from each book that you already own.
And once you get going, that's the thing, isn't it? It's about getting going, and once you get going, you get that impetus and momentum, and you want to strive to do more. So.
I love that lollipop idea, though. I think that's brilliant, because I just think I'm trying multiple meals, but some of them really do seem to go down well with the family, and that can then go on a lollipop stick. So it's actually thinking about that, and the fact that I do always cook in bulk and then I freeze. That's what I always do. And you learn what goes well and what freezes well. And for example, whole wheat pasta freezes a hell of a lot better than white pasta, and it's bits and bobs you learn along the way. But yeah,
Fantastic.
and how you label it as well. My new way of labeling is brown paper tape and a Sharpie pen.
Yeah,
because it can be composted.
And it doesn't peel off in the freezer either.
Exactly.
That sounds great. That is your 3 tips, actually.
Did I?
That is a good tip, because I always struggle with my Sharpie to get it, and then I used something similar before. Excuse me. I used something similar before. I just I used a whiteboard marker, and then I switched to some other kind of tape that I had, but I couldn't tear it off. It was a bit too sticky, and certainly not biodegradable. But thank you for your tips, and thank you for being on the show. I'm going to wrap us up as we're coming to the top of the hour, and I'm going to see if I can remember where I put my outro text that I have. You see, I am trying to get more organized.
It's brilliant. It's good.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you. It's all Gavin's fault because I asked him in the same way I asked you, Jill. I said, "What can I do better? What would you improve?" And he said, "You've got to increase your production value." So I'm trying. Okay, so that's all for tonight, folks. I hope you enjoyed the show and you found it helpful. Don't forget that you can watch or just listen to recording of this show on my website. The address, if you should not know it, is climateactionlife, all one word, .show. www. In front of that if you want. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and please share and hit the like or dislike button to help me reach, or us reach more people. On the 6th of June, which is the next first Monday, This is the downside of having a live show. Damn it! I've written a script and I can't even stick to the script. Tune in on 6th of June when I'll be doing a much better job of this, I swear. And I'll be joined by my special guests to talk about the World Green Roof Day, which is on the 6th of June. It's almost like we planned it. And we'll also talk about urban greening and sustainable architecture. And funnily enough, the special guests are all, well, I think they're all architects. Anyway, join the discussion from 8 p.m. UK time. That's every first Monday of the month. See you next month for more action on climate change. Good night.